Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of What's Broken in My Life. So we've got the Fiero here again, and that's what we're going to be working on. So the last video you guys saw was a replacement and upgrade of the controller, the EFI controller for the car, so that we could actually see the information, see all the data, and we could actually tune and drive this thing. And it was kind of a necessity because when you have really any fuel injection or really any EFI system, you need to be able to see what the system is seeing so you can do anything, whether it be diagnosis for repair or what have you. And that's kind of a big deal, especially with these aftermarket systems. You have to be able to see that because you can't plug in a factory like normal OBD scanner. Well, I took it out because recently two of my vehicles, I think, got a bad tank of gas in town. And I've been working the problems out of them, just driving them. The truck took something like 3 tanks of gas, or 3 partial tanks of gas, to finally get it all burned out, and it's happy again. This thing, I think, got a bad tank of gas in it too. And I think I know the offending gas station, so I'll just stay away from it. But I took it out and I drove it about 50 miles each direction. I drove it to Giddings and back to nearby town, and I was trying to burn the gas out of it. And it ran fine for the most part. It was a little misfiery and stuff. I was like, okay, it's burning bad gas. I'll get it back home, and the last issue it's having is, it's been having this issue for the past few days, is when you would turn the key to start the car, you would have no ability, like it wouldn't start on its own. It would fire right up and die. If the only way you could get it running was if you put your foot in the throttle just a little bit when you turn the key. And that obviously is not, it's not how fuel injection should work. It's not really how a carburetor should work either. So I started messing with it, playing with some of the tune on it, and kind of got myself into a pickle where it didn't want to start at all. It wouldn't want to run at all. And I'll see if I can inset a little bit of footage of that. But it wouldn't want to start. And what I narrowed it down to was, you would turn the key on and it was suddenly having no fuel. There was no fuel in the throttle body. And I was like, well, okay, so did I lose a fuel pump or something? No, pump's coming on. It's got all the fuel pressure in the world. Everything's fine. I put the camera over it and turned the key on. And you turn the key on and there's no initial prime shot. And then as you crank it, there's no fuel spray. So that means that this thing is getting everything it needs. And I checked on the controller. It was getting RPM, it's getting coolant temp, it's getting manifold air pressure, throttle position, it's getting every sensor reading it needs. But it just won't spray fuel. So that leaves me thinking, okay, now I need to call FiTech because I don't know. So I call FiTech, end up on the line for a minute, and I get a hold of a guy who seems to know his stuff, and I explained to him what we did, right? That we ordered a new controller. Someone told me the controller was compatible and we could plug it in and it would work. He proceeds to tell me, he's like, well, I apologize, but I don't know who told you that, but that is not true. That new controller, he said, I'm amazed it even turned on with it, first off. And if it did turn on, the most it's going to do is give you kind of okay information, but it's not compatible at all with your old ECU. So we went through a little bit of diagnostic stuff, even though we were kind of blind on the ECU. And basically what we found was that the factory ECU, which this is basically what it looks like, it's mounted on the side of it, but this is the new one, is shot, or more than likely. And these things are known, apparently, the early generations like mine are known for burning up. I think it basically has to do primarily with like relay packs and stuff in these. There's something associated with that burns up in them. And he said he was honestly kind of amazed that mine was still working at all, given the age of my unit. And I didn't tell him what car it was in, but given the heat buildup that these have in the engine bay, it's amazing it was still working. So he said, bad news and good news. Good news is you're diagnosed. We know you need an ECU. You've got no prime shot and you've got no fuel on key turn with RPM reading. That's a dead ECU, bottom line. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So you need an ECU. That's the bad news. Good news, you know. Bad news, you have it. Good news is you don't have to buy an entire new $800 to $1,100 EFI system. We sell the ECUs that are upgraded. that, well, one, they're replacements. Two, they also come with this. This is a relay pack you can mount anywhere, relay and fuse pack for the ECU, which is apparently the primary failure point with the heat. This can be mounted remote anywhere. So I'm thinking somewhere in the trunk in here to isolate it from the heat a little bit. So that is a long, drawn-out explanation of what we're dealing with. And not looking forward to dealing with it. But, so I watched a couple things from FiTech. I think we should be able to handle it in the car. I don't think we're going to need to remove it. They recommend you take the throttle body entirely off the car. I don't think we're going to need to do that in this case. We'll see if I end up having to pull it off. I just really don't want to mess with any of my... I finally have no vacuum leaks on this. I do not want to mess with that if I can help it. But basically, and I'll show you in a second, but basically the float, what look like float bowls on the side, which house the fuel injectors and where the fuel comes in and goes out, that has to come off. And then the thing that looks like this on the side of it, it's got 4 screws on it. And then this whole thing pulls off. You gently unplug everything that's on it. And then plug in the new one, route your wires, and it should be pretty much plug and play. I don't think there's anything else we're going to need to do with it. If we'll plug it in, see if it all talks to each other. We'll upload a correct tune or a bass tune and see if it starts. If it doesn't, I'll get on the phone with FiTech again and figure out what's going on there. They do have a couple oddball little pieces in here you need to install that I think are a little interesting, but evidently and this is all under the ECU, but evidently the air temperature sensor has changed, even though it looks identical, but it has to be replaced. And they've got this weird little brass and rubber spacer that you may, in their words, you may or may not need. And if it doesn't fit, don't force it, you'll break it, and we won't cover it under warranty. But it's a little rubber gasket brass thing for vacuum sensor. So we'll see if we need it, I guess. I would have been much more happier if they gave me like a year range of units or a serial number range. But with that all being said, let me bring you over here and we'll start pulling screws off this thing so we can start fixing it up and replacing the ECU, and hopefully we can get this thing running again. Because we've actually got a lot of car stuff coming up this month. I've got Fiero Ruckus, that's a event we hold, or that is held in Texas once a year. They hold 2 events every year, Ruckus and Roundup. They hold these 2 events, and they're cruise events for everyone to get together. So that'd be fun. There's also a couple car shows and things like that. So it'd be nice to be able to go out and do car things this month. So let's go over here and get started on it. Okay, first things first, I probably need to remove my, get that out of the way. But, so we need to take these fuel lines off. I don't think I've still got them loose. I just need to. In fact, so I was in here messing with it the other days. Yeah. They're not on here especially tight, and you really don't want them to be. Now, allegedly, one of the things too with this, I don't want that coming loose. It's probably SAE, but that'll do. I don't want to take that off and mess with that little phenolic gasket. But, no, as I was saying, is apparently this is also this ECU does more than just apparently work and relocate those relays. Apparently it is actually has some upgraded, smarter programming in it. Apparently it'll allow for, like, if I were inclined to, like E85. Although I kind of scratched my head, naturally aspirated how much you would need that. But Alright, so I need to get these float balls off. Looks like it's two Allen screws. You've got one here, or two here, two here. Then these will come loose. And we should be good from there. And it can lay off to the sides. And then this guy right here's just got Allen key, Allen key, Allen, Allen, and it comes off. So let me get some Allen's fastener. Let's play, is it metric or is it standard? It's going to be standard. You know, this EFI system really has held up pretty well. And given that they told me, they were like, well, I mean, we'll sell you an ECM for a couple $100, and that's really reasonable of them, honestly, given they don't need to support this anymore. They could just have forced everyone to buy new auto bodies. But I guess with their competition with Holley for kind of domination of the aftermarket EFI world, they're maybe inclined to be a little more helpful than that. Let's see. Alright, so this should, and this is the return side, fuel return. And under here is the injectors, or at least as I understand it, that's where the injectors are. So this should, cool, so that comes off. Just kind of lay out of the way. Hopefully all this gas doesn't hurt any of my paint on anything. Okay. Yep, those two look like two grungy old fuel injectors, but hopefully they'll work. So we need to disconnect. However we do that, these two fuel injectors, the throttle position sensor can come off as well. I'm going to disconnect them from the, oh, there they go, just pops out. Okay, so we're going with just the side cover, just kind of presses them in. I kind of both like and dislike that design. Okay, all right. Let's see, we've also got another connector back here for the idler control motor. Looks like we've also got harness down here for, I apologize for not pulling you all over the place so you can see all this stuff, but truthfully, most of it's not all that interesting. It's just disconnecting connections. That's cool that's not the most exciting thing in the world. And you get the idea that basically if you have one of these, you're just going to be disconnecting everything that your little brain box in here runs to so that you can pull it off. But, alright, so that's off. Now, let me get this rear quote-unquote float ball off, which I'm sure will be hilarious considering it's right here with the throttle in the way. Yep. Oh good, that's in the way. That's fantastic. Is there any way, can I see what I'm working on? Oh, it's fun. Let's put that directly in the way. It's not too difficult, you just do this, but okay, pop this off. Thankfully thankfully these O-rings are still hanging in there. All right, I don't think there's any, maybe that's it. Well, let me get this off and then we'll have a better idea of which wires need to come with it. I think these guys, the ones that go to the controller, are gonna have to come with it. Oh, by the way, remember we were messing with last time if the ECM had enough power, and I was trying to figure out running it with 2 USB-C connections, keep it on and stuff like that. One, I'm hoping those issues kind of resolve themselves with having, I don't know, plugged into the correct computer. That'd be great. But I did talk to one of the guys at FiTech in between these videos, and the guy said that, so this wire right here, that's the 2-pin, the red and black, I always thought power to some degree went through here. I don't know why, but he said, he was like, well, just check this. This needs to have at least, he said at least 8 volts, which seems really low. But if you have issues with power regulation or supply with one of these, he said you can just cut this thing, because all this is 12 volts in and ground for the controller. So you can relocate with this connection 12 volts and ground anywhere you want if you have a more solid than what this is supplying. Now, more than likely, if this is not supplying enough because something's wrong inside of it, it's probably on its deathbed, and you're probably going to have to replace it anyway pretty soon. But, you know, just if you need to get a few more months out of it, or it happens to be in a happy state of death, then I guess that's okay. But I thought that it was interesting to find out if anybody's else is messing with one of these. You might run into that. That's awesome. Is this now? We're going to use SAE fasteners on the sides, and we're going to use metric on the front. That's pretty cool. It's just, you know, it's like they built it with whatever screws were laying around in their pockets at the time. Yep. You can hear by them kind of pop and torque a little bit. I've never been in here before. Never pulled these off. Oh, that's cool. There's no room for it. Let me get a ratchet for whatever size this is. Or is that even a 3? It's a 3. What I took out is a 3. Why did... It makes no sense. That's a 3.5. Okay. I guess I'll just have to do this one slowly, because I don't have a 3.5 for a ratchet. God, I'm just gonna this one, last one. I generally detest using Allen keys as opposed to like the sockets or anything like that, but this is when they're an odd size, it just happens to be the only way I've got them. Makes me wonder if the ones on the side covers aren't actually standard. They're just some god-awful metric size I don't have. Or they're a 4.3265 millimeter. That's handy. Let's lose that screw forever. Alright, that's out of the way. Alright, so this should start. Are we gonna have to pull the throttle body off? Oh no, cool. Thought my studs were gonna get in the way. We're gonna have to pull these injector wires just like on the other side. Pull that out. Way. Came down from the top and then it comes out. Okay. So we got a couple more wires that can go down over here. But you got these too. So this is that intake air temperature sensor that I was talking about that they apparently changed the style, so that's going to be replaced. And then we've got a ground right here, which let's play guess the fastener size again. Oh, there it does match the sides. Cool. Put this off. Alright, pull this out. Nothing in here should be unplug all this stuff. Come on. All right. That was fun. Okay. There we go. That unplugs. Ah, cool. And we're out. Okay. So these are our two ECUs. This is our original one. This is the replacement one from FiTech. Let's see, for starters, the font's changed. They look just a little bit different. We've also got, but other than that, their wiring is pretty much the same. They've got the same connections for the controller. They've got the same connection for like oxygen sensor. All that stuff's the same. Now the biggest difference we have here is that this, like I was showing you earlier, this is where all the relays and fuses are housed, right? So on the old one, at least our fuses were all here. And I don't know, I've had a couple pop over time, but these are also the older style fuses, which I actually kind of prefer. They're easier to find. This one, let me see if I can get up there, has the more modern, like micro fuses, which I guess if you work with modern cars, that's fine, but I tend to work with old trash, and I don't like them because I just don't tend to have them laying around. But other than that, everything in here is pretty much the same, so it should be plug and play. What I wanted to look at in here was the differences between, if there is a difference. Ah, here we go. So they had talked about wires in the way. This guy. So this is a rubber seal for the map sensor. So evidently mine at least has some kind. So we'll look at that's what that is, I guess. Although mine, we'll look at it, because that looks bigger than the one that's on there. So I'll have to play with that. But those were the possible incompatibility issues or minor compatibility issues that you have to work through is whichever seal you have there. Everything else should be the same. There's the ground wire. So, yeah, just a little bit different. Looks like the cover's a little bit thicker. They do supply, obviously, longer screws, so that should fit. So, all right, well, let's take a look at this a little bit closer, and we'll see about finally getting it installed and see if we can get this car back on the road. Alright guys, I'm weak. So I took that off because I started looking at this more. And we'll go ahead and put it together on the bench. But it falls everywhere. So this is the throttle body unit. But this is that weird gasketed hole for the vacuum. And I started playing with it and looking at it, and I started trying to install it in the car. Bottom line is trying to get all these wires fished through and trying to get that little guy and figure out the fitment and is it right. It's just the chances of pinching a wire in here are just way too high. So let me set up the camera, and I wouldn't be able to show you anything either because I'd just be over it the whole time. So let me just set up the camera here on the bench, and we'll get it, see if we can get this thing figured out. Okay. Well, these are the instructions that FiTech gives you as well. Come with it. I guess read that if you're, pause it and read it if you're interested. This is just your fuse information and where your wires are going to go. It doesn't say anything regarding that correct selection of those little vacuum seal. And this is just more instructions regarding mounting of fuse relay box and software updates depending on what ECU you have. So they kind of leave you in the dark for picking out this guy and which one you need. So, and it's going to go, first off, I guess we'll take the low-hanging fruit first. Let me change that guy, the sensor out that they want replaced. Is it going to be 12 mil? It is. It's fighting a little bit. Yeah, there we go. 12 millimeter, evidently. Not sure what this schmoo is that's all over it. But that's the old one. Well, this is our new guy. It's just Teflon tape maybe that they put in here just to kind of limit vacuum leaks. Do I have... I don't think I have any Teflon tape. Just run it in there and pretend it's not a problem. Sounds right. Curious that the other one might have been in bad shape too, because the wiring just rotated easily inside of it, which doesn't seem right. This one doesn't. This one's tight, so I don't know. Let's just make this as difficult as possible to do. I wish they had done this a lot simpler, so you aren't having to, like, particularly because you have to do this seal, that you aren't fishing all this stuff around. Like, That's the entire reason I can't do it in the car, is all these wires and the way they have to be routed. Because some of them have to be routed out the sides here, around the bowls, and some of them have to be routed out the bottom. And figuring that out is less than fun. Alright, I got a ground wire here. So these ones. Go out here is where they're going to go, along with leave that guy. The rest of these are going to go out the bottom. That goes out the other side. Is there a way I can basically set it up like that? It would be nice. Put the box, maybe? See if that'll kind of hold it. I can wedge it with something too. Another box. Okay, I just need it. Stay put, stay put. Yeah, we'll call that good. Alright. Hopefully I'm never doing this again, but if guys at FiTech are paying attention, for the love of God, why does it have to be... You would not offend me to put connections out here. This is, having the spaghetti monster is not particularly helpful. Okay. Their casting is slightly different. Causing some small fitment problems. So I could route that out there. That would still work. I can go down in there. The issue I'm having right now is that, again, mine's a pretty old unit, so it's a little different than some of them. But that vacuum thing lines up. I think it'll work. I think it'll fit. There's a slight fitment issue that, man, right there. And I may file a little bit on the throttle body. That's like a, because this ECU head is just ever so slightly too big. So, let me see if I can file that lip, get it to fit. Aluminum, luckily. And the specific shape of that I don't think is going to matter because it is held on with screws. It's not like that's the... It's not going to affect air cleaner or fitment or anything. I'm not taking it all the way off, I'm just clearancing it a little bit. Okay, let's see if that might have been enough. be. Yeah, this is... Yeah, it fits just fine. It's simple. It just goes right on. Thank you, FiTech. Okay, that's routed wrong. Okay, so it looks like we are lined up. Took a little flashlight, shined it in the grooves, and it appears to be lined up directly on there. Truthfully, since it's a solid piece of metal on a solid piece of metal with 4 points and no provisions made for it to move fore and after or anything, it should be pretty much foolproof. Yeah. If you ever worked on cars, absolutely nothing is foolproof. Okay, so get these tightened down. They didn't give me a torque spec for them. It's gonna be basically just tight. Don't go. I wouldn't use a power tool for this if you're doing this. So just make sure things are snug. They're not gonna come off. But it's aluminum bolts into an aluminum throttle body. You really don't want to put a bunch of torque on this. So hopefully this cures our problems for now. Alright, let me take you back over to the car. We'll drop this thing on. Hopefully my base plate gaskets will do for now. They weren't... This thing actually wasn't quite as tight as I thought it might be, so they aren't like super compressed, so hopefully they'll still work. So guys, I wanted to show you something. I went to go putting the throttle body back together, and I started realizing, and it makes sense. It's like, hang on, which one goes in which injector? I looked, they've got numbers on them. Find one of the numbers. There we go. Injector number 4. I started thinking, which one's 1, 2, 3, and 4? I started looking. I decided to compare to my old one. Notice how they're kind of twisted up and routed to fit down in the little groove down in there. But I started twisting it around, and sure enough, you can barely read it. There's number 4. Well, this had been like that. You can tell by just the way that it naturally sits. So that means I actually had them backwards. I need to twist them up, and 4 is going to be your back one right here in relation to, there's your throttle. So your throttle, if you've got one of these, your throttle rocks back like this. So I would interpret these as the front 2. So this is number 4. And I'll compare the other numbers, but that should help figure out. So I would interpret more than like, because this is number 1, so it's probably 1, 2, 3, 4. Because obviously the other 2 need to be correct as well. But I wanted to show you that so that, you know, obviously if you're doing this, you don't want to have to come back in this thing multiple times because you've got wonky injectors plugged in wrong, that vacuum thing not leaking or not sealing, etc. So, all right, let me keep putting this thing back together, and we'll get it put on the car. let's see if we can put this thing back together. Now should be actually the easy part if everything's routed correctly and if nothing else is broken or failed. So this just drops right on. Okay. Let's get the studs and stuff done first. This is all finished. Oh, all right. Come on. Come on. There we go. I was looking down inside the intake valley too. It's actually remarkably clean. This is a pretty good shape. Oh, come on. Don't play games with that. We've got a slight clearance issue for one of the washers here because the new ECU is bigger. Sneak it past. There we go. Probably got the same issue on this one, so I need to see if I can get this. On this side, it might actually be worse. Got these spacers because there we go. They help with adjusting the distribution of pressure for this plate I've got over here. Let me see if I can get nuts down on it. Man, FiTech, you make this more difficult to install. It also interferes slightly on this front side with the stud nuts, and that's not a Trey has a goofy Fiero setup. That is anybody with a 4-barrel setup. Alright, well, got it passed. That's all. Alright. Next one. These are 13s. Little ratchet here and put these on. Like I said, hopefully, I think it'll be okay, but hopefully the old 4-barrel gasket that's underneath it will still be tight. I mean, if it develops a vacuum leak, that's not a difficult thing to fix. That's, if I have to come back in here and change those, it's $10 in gaskets in 20 minutes. Yeah, so more fun because they made. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. So, right here, boop, zoom makes it hard. Right here, you see this little, on the ECU, they've made this so that this gap, very close, and it means I was having trouble getting my washers and stuff on here, but it also meant I can't put a socket on it. I have to tighten it with a wrench, kind of the old school way, which is not the way I prefer to do it, but I'll set you down over here. Finish getting this thing put together. Means that on this side you have to tighten stuff down with just a wrench, which, I mean, yeah, I have nice wrenches, but it's not 1947. I'd like to be able to use modern ratcheting tools. And I realized probably the reason they did that was to give you more room to route those wires more easily, and I appreciate that. But again, if I were designing this or helping with designing it in any way, one, it probably wouldn't work because I'm not very good at that, but I would have suggested they put some kind of plug connections up here for this stuff. Yeah, it's not as pretty, but a lot easier to deal with. But I understand also some of the appeal here with this thing is that it looks like a carburetor. And I'm not sure how many old guys actually care about that anymore, but when this came out, the whole point was you could put it on and at a car show, at a glance, it would look like it still had a carb on it. So, alright, that's probably tight enough. Aluminum fasteners. Hopefully it's tight enough. It wasn't really tight, that tight to begin with, but okay. So now I just got to route some of these lines again. Got my brake boost, tighten that up. There. Funny bit of history with this screwdriver. When I bought this car, this was the key. The column had been broken, so because they didn't have a key for it. No, it wasn't stolen. They just didn't have a key. And this was the screwdriver that the little lot in California gave me. I think it was the lot. I can't remember if it was the lot or the mechanic shop those were. I think it was the lot though. Yeah, because I remember because it was this. Because I showed up at the mechanic shop because I couldn't do brakes at the time where I was. And I told him, I need the brakes looked at. The guy asked for the keys. I handed him. I was like, I have the screwdriver. And it was so you could stick it in the side of the column and pull the little lock cylinder engagement gears that ran the starter. Anyway, that was a fun trip. I would advise anybody, if you have the ability and the interest, go across country, go buy a car that you shouldn't buy, and drive it home. It is immensely fun and challenging. Remembering where things go. First, I believe. Second. Fuel inlets. On. Now let's get all this other stuff. Cool, so we now have prime shot, so there's a fair chance this will actually start. So let me get the camera out of the way and we'll see if parts fly everywhere.
don't know this, but there used to be a bog in it when you would lean in, particularly at wide open throttle like that. There was kind of a bog in it. It sounds very boggy. It's very loud, but that throttle body is honestly huge for this car. But that's seems to be fixed now, especially for, I mean, basically all I did was upload a bass tune, and that's it. I mean, I haven't adjusted anything, and it's running much happier. Let's go for a little drive.
Well, that's awesome, guys. That worked out great. Let me turn off the fan. So it looks like the new FiTech ECU has pretty much handled our problem. This thing is now running happily. It's running smoothly. It's running better than it ever has before. I'm very happy about that. My guess is that's possible the old ECU was slightly developing kind of brain cancer over an extended period of time, making it a little bit wonky, and updated newer software is probably helping as well. So any case, I'm going to go keep driving this thing, have a little more fun with it. I hope you enjoyed this, a little bit of update on the FiTech stuff. If you have any more questions about it, obviously contact FiTech if you have one of these things and you really need to know more. But if you kind of stumped a little bit or you're just curious about my opinion, let me know. See what I've got to say about it. But thank you for watching. I appreciate you watching. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, that helps. The more that gets done on the channel, the more exposure it gets, the more it floats around, the more people start watching, the more cool stuff I'll start doing. So we're getting ready to move towards doing some more cool stuff. I know I keep saying that, but we're getting there. It's off camera right now, but the engine hoist is now here. The last set of parts is here for the engine that we're going to be doing too. So last thing I need at all is I need to go source a few bolts. But head gaskets came in, head bolts came in, everything is there for the engine to go into the white car here. Truck is pretty much happy, ready to go. It's going to be in a couple car shows this year, or the tail end of this year, so we'll see how that goes. I've got some other minor boring stuff that's probably not going to be filmed on it, but yeah, I appreciate you watching. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.